The lawyer's hands were completely still when she slid the folder across the desk toward me. That was the thing I kept coming back to afterward. How she'd done this before. Like she already knew what I was about to find inside. I hadn't even wanted to be there that morning. My husband had asked me to stop by his estate lawyer's office to pick up some documents he said he'd forgotten. He was stuck in a meeting, he texted me. Just a quick errand, he said. It'll take 5 minutes, I should have known. He always made things sound like 5 minutes. The lawyer, Miss Carver, a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses pushed up into silver hair, looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. Your husband asked me to prepare some documents, she said. But before you take them, I think there's something you need to understand. I remember thinking that was an odd way to start. Is everything okay? I asked. She didn't answer right away. She just opened the folder herself and turned it around so I could read it. I didn't understand what I was looking at. Not at first. It was a property transfer agreement. The address was our address, our house in Canada, the one we'd bought together 6 years ago, the one I had put my entire $47,000 TFSA into for the down payment, the one with the backyard that backed onto the conservation area, where we'd talked about one day building a deck, maybe a little garden. The name on the transfer wasn't mine. I looked up at her. Who is Natalie Brisson? Ms. Carver took her glasses off. She set them very carefully on the desk between us. That, she said quietly, is what I was hoping you might be able to tell me. I need to back up, because if I'm going to tell this story properly, you need to understand what my life looked like from the outside. From the outside, it looked fine. Better than fine, actually. My name is Simone. Sorry, that's a habit. I've been in therapy for 8 months now, and my therapist keeps telling me to use my name when I tell this story, to own it. My name is not important. What matters is that I was 31 years old, I worked as a speech-language pathologist at a pediatric clinic in Ottawa, and I had been married to my husband for 4 years. I'll call him my husband throughout this. Not because I'm protecting him, he doesn't deserve protection, but because I have learned that giving someone a name sometimes makes them more human than they have earned the right to be. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party in the Glebe. He was funny. He remembered details about things I said, my sister's name, the name of the street I grew up on in New Brunswick, the fact that I hate the smell of lavender. He seemed, in those early years, like someone who truly paid attention to me. I was not a naive person. I had a graduate degree, I had friends who loved me, I had a mother who had taught me to read contracts before I signed them and to always keep a copy of everything, and yet, there is something that happens when a person is very deliberate in their kindness at the beginning. It creates a kind of debt in your chest. You start to believe you owe them the benefit of the doubt in all the years that follow. We bought the house in 2019. It was registered in both our names. I have the original deed with my signature on it. I looked at it many times in the months after Miss Carver's office. I kept thinking, this is real, this is legal, this exists. It was the one thing I needed to remind myself that I had not imagined my own life. Because by that point, my husband had become very good at making me feel like I was imagining things. It started small, the way it always does. A comment here and there about my memory. You already told me that, sweetheart. No, you said you were fine with it. Don't you remember? A gentle, patient expression on his face that said I was tired, I was confused, I should rest. He was so good at that expression, so consistent. He wore it the way some men wear a watch, like a small, quiet signal of his own reliability. I gained weight in our 3rd year of marriage, not dramatically, maybe 12, 15 pounds, enough that my clothes fit differently, enough that I noticed. I mentioned it to my GP at my annual appointment in the fall of 2022, and she ran some blood work, standard stuff, and called me a week later to say everything looked normal, just stress, and maybe watch the sodium. I accepted that, I moved on, but I was tired in a way that sleep didn't fix. I was forgetting words in the middle of sentences, and I am a person whose entire job involves language, so that frightened me more than I wanted to admit. I cried easily. I felt most of the time like I was moving through water. I told myself it was my 30s. I told myself it was the pandemic aftermath. I told myself a lot of things. I did not tell myself something is wrong in this house. The second appointment with my GP happened because my sister pushed me. She'd come to visit from Moncton that February, and she looked at me across the kitchen table on her second morning there and said, "You don't look like yourself." "I'm tired," I told her. "You've been tired for 2 years," she said. I made the appointment to get her to stop worrying. I genuinely believed there would be nothing to find. Dr. Ashworth, she's been my GP for 9 years. She delivered the news about my dad's diagnosis. She's seen me at my worst. She called me into her office rather than giving me the results over the phone. I remember that detail because she'd always called before, always. So when the receptionist said, "Can you come in Thursday at 2?" I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot for a full 5 minutes before I could drive home. She was calm when I sat down across from her, but there was something careful in her calm, the way a person is careful when they're choosing each word before they say it. "Your iron levels are low," she said. "Your thyroid numbers are slightly off. But that's not what I want to talk to you about." She paused. "There are elevated levels of certain compounds in your blood that shouldn't be there. Heavy metals, specifically arsenic." I heard the word, I processed the letters of it, and then I said something that I'm almost embarrassed to repeat. "From food," I said. "I eat a lot of rice." Dr. Ashworth looked at me very steadily. "The levels we're seeing are not consistent with dietary exposure," she said. This would be consistent with repeated low-dose ingestion over an extended period of time." The room was very quiet. "I need to ask you something," she said. "And I need you to be honest with me because your safety depends on it. Is there anyone in your life who has access to your food or your drinks on a regular basis? Anyone who might want to harm you?" I did not answer right away. I was thinking about the smoothies. Every morning for the past 18 months or so, my husband had started making me a green smoothie before I left for work. He'd started it during a health kick. He'd read something about anti-inflammatory diets, he said. He bought a good blender. He was meticulous about it. Spinach, frozen mango, almond milk, a scoop of protein powder he kept in a separate container in the pantry. He seemed so proud of it, so thoughtful. I had thanked him every single morning. "I can't think of anyone," I told Dr. Ashworth. But here's the truth. I could. I just wasn't ready to think it. She told me not to confront anyone. She told me to be careful. She gave me a referral to a specialist at the Ottawa hospital and wrote something in her notes that I only read much later in a legal context. "Patient appears guarded, may not have disclosed full picture of home situation, follow-up required." I drove home on autopilot. I sat in the driveway of our house in Canada for 20 minutes. I looked at the front door with the little wreath I'd put up in November that I hadn't taken down yet. I looked at the light on in the kitchen. I thought, if it's him, then none of this was an accident. And then, because I'm a person who needed proof before I could allow myself to believe the worst of the person who had slept next to me for 4 years, I decided to find out. I want to be honest about this part. I was not calm. I want to tell this story and sound like I had a plan, like I was strategic from the beginning. I wasn't. I was terrified. I cried in the parking lot of the Loblaws on Hazeldean Road for 20 minutes one evening because I had reached for my phone to call him and then realized I couldn't. That is not a detail that makes me sound strong, but it's true. What I did have was a friend. Her name is Mireille. She's been my best friend since we were 11 years old at École Élémentaire in Dieppe, and I called her from that parking lot. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, which is something I have always loved about her. When I finished, she said, "You need to stop drinking the smoothies, and you need to talk to a lawyer." I started pouring the smoothies down the drain the next morning. I was very careful about it. I rinsed the glass. I made sure there was nothing to see. My husband watched me drink my smoothie every morning, stood at the counter with his coffee, and so I learned to stand at the counter with my smoothie and nod and say it's good, and then wait until he left the room. It was the most frightening performance of my life. Mireille found me a family lawyer through her cousin, a woman named Ms. Tremblay Park in Nepean who specialized in high-conflict separations. I told Miss Tremblay Park everything in our first meeting, about the blood work, about the smoothies, about the years of being told I was misremembering things, the exhaustion, the weight gain, the brain fog that had cost me 2 clients at work because I had confused their files twice in the same month. Miss Tremblay Park was very quiet through most of it. Then she said, "Has he made any changes to shared financial accounts or property? Anything that seemed unusual?" I told her I didn't think so. She told me to find out. That's how I ended up at Miss Carver's office. Not by accident, not as an errand. I had called the estate lawyer's office myself the week before using an old business card I found in my husband's home office while he was at a hockey game. I'd said I was following up on documents for a family estate matter. The receptionist had, bless her, confirmed my appointment and assumed I was expected. Miss Carver had not assumed anything. When I sat down across from her that morning, she'd looked at me for a moment and then said, "You're not here because he sent you, are you?" It wasn't a question. I shook my head, and that was when she opened the folder. The property transfer was dated 3 months earlier. Our house, with my $47,000 down payment, my name on the original deed, the backyard and the conservation area, and the unbuilt deck, had been quietly prepared for transfer to a numbered corporation. The numbered corporation, Miss Carver explained, was registered in Alberta. The director of that corporation was Natalie Brisson. "I prepared this document in good faith," Miss Carver said. "He told me his wife was aware and had agreed to the transfer. He told me you had signed a separate document relinquishing your interest." She paused. "You did not sign any such document." "No," I said, "I did not." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that I have thought about many times since. "I have been doing this work for 27 years. And I am going to tell you something that is outside my professional scope, but I am going to tell you anyway." She folded her hands on the desk. "Do not go home and ask him about this. Don't tell him you know. You need to speak to your own lawyer today, not tomorrow. Today." I was already texting Miss Tremblay Park before I got back to my car. The next 6 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went to work every day. I came home. I poured my smoothies down the drain. I sat across from my husband at dinner and listened to him talk about his day, and I smiled and I asked follow-up questions and I passed the salad bowl. Morel had helped me find a private investigator, a retired OPP officer named Mr. Gallagher who worked out of a small office near Carlingwood. He was thorough. It took him 3 weeks to find out that Natalie Brisson was a woman from Gatineau my husband had been seeing for 14 months. He found out that the numbered corporation had been incorporated with startup capital that had come in part from our joint RRSP, a $22,000 withdrawal that my husband had made 9 months earlier with a forged spousal consent signature. $22,000 from the account we'd been contributing to since the first year of our marriage. The account we called our future money because we'd talked about early retirement, maybe a place on Prince Edward Island. I sat with Mr. Gallagher's report for 1 full evening. I read every page. Then I made myself dinner, a bowl of pasta, I remember, nothing elaborate, and I sat at the kitchen table alone and I thought about the version of my husband that I had married, the one who remembered small details, the one who was patient, the one who made me smoothies. I thought, that person was always a performance, and I had been the audience. The morning everything came apart was a Tuesday in April. I had moved my most important documents, my SIN card, my passport, copies of our mortgage and both our wills, my original employment contract, 3 years of tax returns, to Muriel's apartment 2 weeks earlier. Miss Tremblay Park had told me to do that. She had also helped me open a new individual checking account at a different bank branch in my name only and arrange for my direct deposit to be redirected. My husband didn't know any of this. What he did know at 9:17 a.m. on that Tuesday morning was that 2 officers from the Ottawa Police Service were at our front door. He also knew about 4 minutes later that Miss Tremblay Park was on the phone with him to inform him that I had filed for divorce and that a motion had been brought to freeze all jointly held assets pending investigation of the fraudulent RRSP withdrawal. I was not at home when this happened. I was sitting in Muriel's car 2 blocks away. She'd brought Tim Hortons. We sat there and we drank our coffees and we didn't say much. I watched a dog walker go by with 3 golden retrievers and a little terrier that kept trying to go a different direction than all the others. My phone buzzed 11 times in 20 minutes. I didn't answer. The legal process took the better part of a year. I won't detail all of it, partly because some of it is still under a publication ban related to the criminal proceedings, and partly because, honestly, the legal details are not the part of this story that matters. What matters is this: the fraudulent RRSP withdrawal resulted in criminal fraud charges. The ongoing arsenic exposure, documented by the Ottawa hospital specialist, confirmed by a toxicologist who testified that the levels were inconsistent with any accidental or dietary poor source, resulted in charges of criminal negligence causing bodily harm. My husband's lawyer argued for months that the arsenic could have come from old pipes in our house, from the well water at his parents' cottage, from a number of environmental. The toxicologist dismantled every one of those arguments. He was convicted on both counts. He is currently serving a sentence at a minimum security facility in Eastern Ontario. Natalie Brisson was not charged. The investigation found no evidence that she had known about the poisoning, and I believe that. I have no particular feelings about her. She was deceived too, in different ways. The house was not transferred. The RRSP funds were partially recovered. My name stayed on the deed. I sold the house in October. I didn't want to live there. I found a 2-bedroom apartment near the Rideau River on a street with very old maple trees that go completely orange in September. I have a cat now, an enormous, bad-tempered gray tabby from the Humane Society that my sister helped me pick out. I named him Gerald, which is a terrible name for a cat, and he's perfect. I went back to Dr. Ashworth 6 months after the charges were laid. She ran my blood work again. Everything was normal. My iron was actually good for the first time in years. She looked at the results, and then she looked at me, and she said quietly, "You look like yourself again." I have thought about that a lot. What it means to look like yourself. Whether the version of me that existed in that house ever really was myself, or whether she was a diminished thing. Tired, uncertain, full of apologies she owed no one. I think she was doing her best with what she had. I think she believed in something real, even if the thing she believed in turned out to be constructed. I am not angry at her. I was her. There's a question I've been asked, by my therapist, by Muriel, by my sister, and it's this: would you have wanted to know sooner? I've thought about this for a long time. I think the honest answer is, I don't know. The knowing, when it came, was devastating. It rearranged everything I thought I understood about my own life. There were weeks where I woke up at 3 a.m. and lay there cataloging moments, a dinner, a vacation, a quiet Sunday, and asking myself, was that real? Was any of it real? But the not knowing was making me disappear. Slowly, in increments so small I couldn't see them in the moment, my body was telling me something was wrong long before my mind was willing to listen. So I suppose my answer is this: the truth doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives through a folder slid across a lawyer's desk, or a blood work result read aloud in a careful voice, or a dog walker with 3 golden retrievers passing outside a car window while your life rearranges itself. But it arrives, and you are still there to receive it. That, I think, is the part that matters.